Now, the most important thing I would say with this kind of project is to, I think the place where you guys can get sort of stuck is when you're trying to use the extrude. You want to make sure that you don't drop it. Okay, so like if I'm extruding the back here, there's like one more note before we move on. If I'm going to extrude like the back of the shape here, you want to make sure that when you are extruding, you know, you're pulling it, and it can be very difficult depending on your angle and stuff. You just don't want to do this. Okay, and then you look at it later and you go back and you see that you did this. You see, and if I go to edge mode, hopefully this will be even clearer. Like you can see, I made all of these extra extrusions. That's the place that's going to get you like sort of tripped up, I think, the most very quickly is when you're accidentally adding all these polygons for no reason. It might not be something that causes like a real problem for you, but it does make it annoying to work with the object. So if I want to select pieces of it, selecting one piece and just going and doing is a much more friendly way of working, as opposed to now that I made all of these accidental extrudes. Now I have to go in here and I look at it and I say, oh man, I now have to individually select these bit by bit by bit, or make sure that I select all of them. And if they're not necessary and you didn't need them, then that just becomes an annoyance. Okay, so I would definitely encourage you guys to look at your model as you're working and double check, go up to it and see and make sure that you actually have one edge there, as opposed to now that I've got all of these extra ones. You want to make sure that you're not adding them by accident. Really think about that anything when you're modeling, you want it to be purposeful. So if you're adding something, you want to make sure that it's there for a reason. If you're not sure if you need it or something like that, you could always come back to it and add it. But when you add stuff, it's harder to, it starts to get harder to work with it the more and more polygons there are and the more and more selections you have to do. So if you can keep it as low poly as possible while you're working, and then you could add more details and you could add more edges and stuff as you need it for finessing the shape and, you know, working on the edges, the bevels and whatnot. But if you end up in a situation like this where there's all of these selected here at one, you know, if I select all of these so you can see, this is not useful at all. This is a mistake. It looks like a mistake, and it's going to end up causing you, you know, pain and suffering if you end up leaving it there. So if you do end up adding accidental extrudes, you can get rid of them. Obviously, I would recommend you undo if you see that you did it. But if you end up in a situation where you did this a while ago, you can select, I would loop select, so UL, I would loop select these ones that I don't need. Hopefully, and be like, okay, this is one last selection I'm going to do. I would select all of those ones that are not necessary, and I would make sure that I'm selecting the whole thing. And then you can come in here and you can use like a tool like dissolve. Okay, we'll get rid of it. Okay, not delete. Okay, that's the problem. See that? If I selected those extra edges and I went, okay, well, I don't need them, that was an accident, I'll just hit delete. You're actually deleting the whole thing. Okay, so just be aware of that. If you select, whether it's an edge or a point or the polygon itself, if you hit the delete key and you've selected something, you're going to delete it. You're not just going to make it disappear. You can't just make the edges go away and keep the polygons, okay? Because you've made like a bunch of extra polygons here. You're not, I have 36 edges. But if I switch to polygon mode, it's not like I have one polygon here. I have tons of extra polygons I made too. So you can't hit delete, okay, because delete will actually get rid of anything that is connected to your selection. So it's going to get rid of those points, it's going to get rid of those edges, and it's going to get rid of those polygons. So instead what you need to do is you need to select it, and if you don't want it anymore, you just want it to go away, then you would go over here, and probably the quickest thing to use is down here at the bottom, is dissolve. Okay? You can use this on edges, polygons, points. It will just get rid of what you have selected, and it will basically, the leftover will just be connected again. Okay? So instead of having all of these extra cuts in here, I can just dissolve, and it will go back to one big connected polygon. Okay, so that's something that's good for if you're having a hard time with the extrude and you find yourself constantly dropping it and picking it up and dropping it and picking it up, and you know that you're adding extra pieces every time you do that, the dissolve is a useful way to fix, to clean up if you find yourself having that issue. Also, if you use the knife tools and you make cuts by accident, or you make cuts that end up not being useful, then again, select them and use dissolve and clean up your model. Okay, and so that way, you know, you'll end up hopefully with a more structured and tailored look for what you're doing, and not having messy geometry all over the place. Because the model might be okay. You might get by with, you know, if you go to your model mode and you get out of looking at where all the lines are and you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, you know, I think it's fine. It looks fine here. That's sort of the sort of the enemy in waiting there. You might end up then putting a texture on it, or then you might add lights to the scene, and that's where you see all of a sudden those little things that you ignored before and you thought, okay, I'll just leave my geometry alone and hopefully it'll be okay. You might then add a texture, and then like a shiny texture or a plastic texture might end up being like, okay, well, there you go. Now I can see it. It gets all wrinkly or something, it gets all distorted, and then you'll have to go back to your geometry and fix your geometry to make your texture look right. So it's those kind of situations that you might find yourself in that you'll have to sort of figure out how to go about it. Okay, so in the same vein, I did want to show you guys the bridge. Okay, because the bridge is, again, I want to show you just because, one, it's super useful, and two, it's one of my favorite tools, and I think it's just something that can solve a lot of problems for you. Because sometimes you have your existing geometry, and to do something, it might be so many extra steps to use the existing geometry, but sometimes it might be quicker to delete something and then just create a new piece of geometry in its place, and that will save you time, and it'll be a quicker way to achieve the same goal. So say I had deleted that piece that you saw before. Say I deleted that, okay? And so now I have this big hole here. Obviously I have to fix that and I have to address it, okay? But say what I wanted to do was to make this part smaller. Okay, say I wanted to scale this down, and I wanted to move it down. Okay, so that so I'm changing the size of it, and I'm changing the location of it a little bit. So say I just move it towards the bottom here. Okay, I'm going to scale it a little bit more. I'm going to move it down. I'm going to line it up with the bottom edge here, and I'm going to pull it out a little bit. Okay, and so now I have this free-floating polygon here, two of them. I can see the inside of my shape, so that's not good. Sometimes you're okay with that. Sometimes as soon as you see this, it breaks the illusion. No longer does it look like a 3D shape. Now you can see that it's paper thin, so now it starts to look like you made this car out of construction paper or something like that. So I want to fill up that hole again and make sure that it is not visible to see the inside. So when you want to add new geometry, when you have missing geometry, the bridge is a great tool to do that. So the bridge here, there's a lot of different tools here that will do that, like close polygon will add, you can see right there from the example here, it will take a polygon and it will fill in the space. The bridge is, the reason I like the bridge is because it lets you determine where you want to start from and where you want to end. So it's essentially just like the name suggests, you make a bridge between two existing edges and it creates a polygon in that space. So basically I get my bridge tool, which is another one of these easy shortcuts. The B key is bridge. So it's one of these frequent use ones that are in this box here that is lucky enough to have a single keystroke. So you have D for extrude, I for inner extrude, and you have B for bridge. Okay, and so what I can do is I can go right up to the edge here. Okay, and you can see that it highlights it. And then I can start to drag from it, okay? And you can see what it's looking for. It's like a magnet. You're going to find the other edge you want to connect it to, okay? Now, so I get right across here, and you can see that once it finds the other edge, you need two. Once it finds the other edge there, then it will snap to it, and you'll see this little white overlay that will show you where the new polygon is going to get created. So if I click there, now you can see I created a new piece of geometry there myself. I like sort of customized it, okay? and now I have created that new polygon between two edges. Okay. Now you do have to be careful with it because it will let you connect to other places if you don't know. So if I'm not careful, you can see here I actually connected it to the side. So it's very important that you sort of go and slide it and make sure you connect it to the edge that you want. Okay, so I connected over there, and it's slanted, and maybe if that's what I wanted, that's okay, but I want to go straight. Okay, but you can go wherever you want. I can go down here, and I can close it if I wanted to. Okay, if I wanted that to be a separate piece now. Okay, but I would want to do this another way if that was the case. But you could pull it. Okay, so I select the bridge tool B key. I make sure I'm on edge mode. Okay, and then I click my first edge and I find my second edge. I drag until it sticks to it. Okay, and so now I go one edge there, two edge, and again make sure you're careful about where you're going. Go a little slow so that you make sure you connect to the right place. This connects there. This one connects here. Okay, and then I can go underneath it. Don't forget about the bottom. Connect that one there, and connect this one there. Okay, and so now I've made new geometry all the way around my shape for the hole that I had. And obviously what's happening back here is a little bit awkward, but I can sort of change my proportions here and fix that. But now at least that hole that I created before when I deleted it, now I have customized the gap there. Okay, and so that's the bridge tool. So the bridge tool is super useful to take polygons that are or edges that are not connected, and you can create a new polygon in between.